It's the Brad and John Show.
It's the Brad and John Show. Today's date is Thursday, February 27th. This is the C Block, which means we started about 7:40. We're a little bit late this morning. And we do the show live 7 to 8 o'clock every morning, Monday through Friday, Central Standard Time, daylight time coming up. And that's how we do the show. Now, John, two topics for this last segment, and you get to pick which one I go with first, okay? First one is Rachel Maddow, and the second one is the Donald Trump gold card. Which one should we go through first?
Let's go with, I really want to hear about the gold card, so let's save that for a second, and let's start with that angry young man, Rachel Maddow.
Okay, so we're doing the gold card first.
No, we're saving the gold card for last. Let's start with Rachel Maddow.
Okay, if you know what's going on with this crazy stuff, she's all upset because they got rid of Joy Reid, okay? The Read Out or whatever his show was. Okay, now keep in mind, there's a basic tenet in broadcasting that you have to attract an audience, and the audience has to give you enough numbers, whereas a commercial broadcaster, you can go out and sell the advertising because the advertisers have metrics. They're called cost per point or impressions or stuff like that, and they have a dollar figure assessed to them. So in St. Louis, it used to be, I can't remember the exact numbers, but in radio, you have what they call gross rating points. And if you were paying $100 for a gross rating point, you were paying too much. If you were paying $10 for a gross rating point, you got a hell of a deal, okay? So it's the same thing in television. They have a metric that comes out, okay? MSNBC has no viewers anymore. We've talked about the fact that there are big-time radio stations, not necessarily in St. Louis. It used to be like KMOX when they had huge numbers. But if you take some of the big-time stations like in New York or San Francisco or Los Angeles, one radio station in one city could have more, I know we're talking listeners as opposed to viewers, but let's talk about more people who are listening to that radio station in one city than are watching MSNBC in the entire country. Okay, get what I'm saying? So in other words,
yeah, it's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah.
It's to the point the numbers are in the toilet. Okay, Rachel Maddow is all upset because of the fact that some of her staffers are going to be laid off, and they're making cuts at her network because of the fact that how dare the network do this? How dare the network try to not lose too much more money with the stupid channel that nobody watches? How deaf can Rachel Maddow be? I mean that would be like saying if you were in the restaurant business and you had a restaurant that was bleeding money. Let's say it was losing $100,000 a month, and the owner one day says, okay, look, not doing this anymore. I'm essentially putting $100,000 of my own money just to keep this place afloat. One of two things going to happen. We're either going to turn this place around, or we're just going to flip the switch and we're going to just close the doors and we're not doing this anymore, okay? But no, Rachel Maddow has to complain because they're cutting staff. Is she like, and she's the same one, and I didn't realize this. Did you know this crazy story about the fact that she was doing a 5-day-a-week show and then she got down to 1 day a week with no cut and pay? John, if you were working for Monsanto back in the day, Bayer, and you were working 5 days a week and you said to them, guys, I don't really want to work 5 days a week. I want to work 1 day a week, but I want you to keep paying me for the 5. How long would you have that job, John?
Would have been hitting the bricks with a box of my stuff in a minute. Right. I would have been dismissed faster than Brad on Christmas Eve.
Right, you'd be out the door. Okay, here's the interesting part of this story. She's back doing the 5-day-a-week show, but only for the first 100 days of the Trump administration. Did you know this?
No, so it's going to be like documenting all the terrible things of the first 100 days, like dramatically, and then is she back to 1 day a week, or then is she gone?
No, that's what they're talking about. She's back to 1 day a week. And I'm thinking to myself.
Wow, nice deal. So wait, hold on. So in that time block, then who gets that time block the other four weekdays?
They rotate it around. It's sort of like, I think it's sort of like the deal they do with Jon Stewart on Comedy Central, where he used to do 5 days a week. Now he does 1, and then they have like sort of a, what do you call it? Like menage a trois. No, that's not what you call it.
Yikes. Yeah, a rotating crew of people. Maybe we'll call it a bullpen, Brad.
Right, a bullpen of people. Okay, so, I mean, the average person looks at this and goes, Okay, hold on a minute. She's making 7 figures. I think she might be even making 8 figures. She's into the millions she's making for the show. She's on a network that nobody watches anymore. And I'm not trying to be nasty. Nobody watches it. It's to the point where the numbers are abysmal. There are some day parts where Fox does like 10 times the audience, okay? And even to the point where CNN's actually gaining some numbers back, but MSNBC is not. And part of it has to do with the fact that I think people are just tired of my opinion, this is my opinion, that people saw the fact that we had the CNN people and the MSNBC people who would just tar and feather Trump, and he's a terrible person, and he should be thrown in jail, and blah, 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 blah. And people saw that and go like, okay, enough's enough. We're tired of this. We're going to elect this dude as president, and we're going to give him a shot and see what he does. Okay? I think some people just got to the point where, remember the Democrats called him Hitler and he's a fascist and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, even to the point where Elon Musk gave the Hitler salute at one of the events and stuff. Come on. So isn't she like sort of a mockery of herself by doing this?
Yeah, I don't know, because, and my guess here, I haven't heard anybody say this. I haven't followed this story before, but I'm guessing, excuse me, if you're a MSNBC loyalist and you really couldn't stand Trump, you probably in the first 100 days, in my mind, you'd be more likely to tune out of the news. Like, you don't want to be reminded every day for X number of hours, every time you turn on MSNBC, that your team lost, that Donald Trump is now president and he's making all these crazy changes. We'll use another baseball analogy. If the Cardinals are in last place, their viewership is going to be less than if they're headed to the World Series.
Right. Okay, let me read you the first 2 paragraphs of this story. MSNBC star Rachel Maddow will lose much of her staff as part of the network's production cuts, Fox News Digital has confirmed. Maddow's team is expected to be slashed in April after she finishes broadcasting 5 nights a week as part of MSNBC's primetime coverage of President Donald Trump's first 100 days in office. The Rachel Maddow show will then revert to only Mondays, an arrangement the network's most powerful host has brokered despite her lofty salary. Much of the staff being laid off also worked on the Alex Wagner show, the now canceled program that previously took over Maddow's 9 p.m. Eastern time slot, Tuesday through Friday, when the Rachel Maddow show only airs on Mondays. Inside with Jen Psaki will be taking its place in MSNBC's revamped programming lineup, with Maddow Wagner sharing staffers between being let go. Okay, once again, this is like when I listen to NPR and they come to an end of a program and they list 4,352 names. Our associate producer is Jim Smith and blah, 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 blah. And they must list 30 different people. And I'm thinking, okay, these people are producing a 1-hour show once a week. You get into the real radio business, like, the network radio business, like Premiere and also Westwood One, which is, the 2 big talk radio networks. Premiere is, in the old days, it was Rush Limbaugh. Now it's Clint or Clay and Buck and stuff like that. They probably have a staff of like 5 people, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that, and they produce 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. NPR produces 1 hour a week, and they have a staff of 30 or 40 people. You see where I'm getting with this?
I do, but in fairness, remember, as a longtime listener to the BS show of you and Shelley Barr, at the end, you would always say, fact-checking by smartest woman in the world. Unnecessary details by info dude. Like you would list all the people that have contributed to the show every day, and you would go through like 20 people.
But I wasn't.
Now, that was 5 times the number of people that actually listened to the show. But you would read the names of your friends and everything.
But it was a joke. It was to make fun of NPR.
No, I'm making that up, Brad. I literally never heard you do that. I'm just joking.
Okay.
Why doesn't Rachel Maddow go to George Soros, who finally somebody enters the radio industry, Brad, with a vision and a plan and an unbiased approach to providing news and information? The great George Soros. Why doesn't Rachel text George and say, let's do a little simulcast thing. Let's work something out. Forget about buying all those right-wing stations that you're going to acquire. Start with me, George. Start with Rachel, and we will dominate radio. We'll take this dead industry off life support, who's begging for the government to force car makers to put stupid AM radio in cars. Let's save the radio industry together. That's what she should do.
John gives his bias report. All I'm saying, John, is that I think that if you're making seven figures and I think she may be making eight figures. I think she's making like 10 million a year or something like that. If you're making that kind of money and you're crying about your staff, you're making enough money where if you were a good person, you'd say, you know what? I'm just going to pick up the staff. I'm going to pay for that staff. I'm just going to pay for those people out of my own pocket. Because then I'd go like, okay, I like that Rachel Maddow. You know, she was going to get her staff cut. No,
I'm surprised she doesn't do that just for the PR thing. But I mean, isn't it in her nature and a progressive nature to just complain about stuff instead of doing something?
I don't know. Okay, on to the gold card thing. You know what we're talking about with the gold card thing?
Yeah, so Trump's replacing the traditional visa program, which is flawed and terrible, with what he's calling the gold card, right?
Okay, but I have said this all along. And to me, this is so blatantly obvious. We have a deficit. We have Elon Musk who's trying to cut all these crazy stories. And some of these you read and you go like, I can't believe we were paying for that. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Okay, so the gold card is if you're a citizen of another country and you come up with $5 million, you write a check to the U.S. Treasury for $5 million, you will be granted citizenship. I think you still have to go through the procedures and take the same class and all that kind of stuff and pass the test and stuff like that. But essentially, you will pass the wait list, okay? Now, what I've read is there are dozens of countries that already do this, that you can become one of their citizens. But I said all along that what we should do is, this is basic accounting where you have assets and liabilities, okay? If you have an illegal immigrant that crosses the border and they end up like, let's say in New York City, and the taxpayers have to buy them a hotel room at the Roosevelt and they give a Visa gift card and they get this and they get that, they become a liability. In other words, as far as the city is concerned, they're costing the city, they're not making the city any money. And same thing with the country, okay? Turn the tables on that and say, okay, all you illegal immigrants, here's what you want to do. If you want to stay in this country, for the next 10 years, you have to pay us $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month to the federal government. And that's just to keep you in the country. And if you got kids, each one of those kids, you got to pay $500 a kid. And you got a wife, she's $1,500. Okay, you pay this money for the next 10 years, and then we'll let you become a citizen, okay? If you can't make that payment, hasta la vista, baby. You know, don't let the border fence hit your butt on the way out, but we're not taking liabilities, we're taking assets. You can either be on the top end of the balance sheet, or you can be on the bottom end of the balance sheet. You can either be top line, which is revenue, I should say top line and middle line. Top line, revenue, middle line, expense, but what's got to come down to is the bottom line has got to be positive. It can't be negative. And each one of you has your own balance sheet, and get with it. So get out there and start a business, work 3 jobs, do Uber Eats, do DoorDash, whatever it takes. Here's the deal. Why don't they do that?
I think that tourists at the Statue of Liberty are confused right now because they see a teardrop running down Lady Liberty's face. Give us your poor, your weak, your crippled, the people who smell bad, all the stuff that we say about immigrants. Brad, the United States is not a place where we run a balance sheet as we welcome newcomers. We're open to all people. And just because you may view them as a drain on resources doesn't mean that we shouldn't welcome them here, Brad.
See, what I find so fascinating about this is we go from one administration to the other. I think in my life, and I'm an old guy, so I've seen this many times, I have never seen a tremendous turnaround like I've seen in the past, 2 months now? Was it?
Yeah, very quick.
It's not even really 2 months, because here it is. He was
a month and a half, maybe.
A month and a half. He was inaugurated.
A month and a week, actually.
Yeah, a month and a week, because he was inaugurated on the 20th, right? And today's the 27th, so literally it is a month and a week. So it's like 35 days, right? 35 days or 37 days or something like that. And it's just like, okay, to me, it's just mind-boggling, because why did now it's to the point where we didn't even talk about this. This is for tomorrow. Have you heard the book that Jake Tapper's coming out with?
Yeah, and so give an overview of that. Well, let me describe this and then see if I got this right. So he and someone else have written a book about the fact that a bunch of folks around Joe Biden knew that Biden was in cognitive decline, allowed him to run anyway, and the potential destructive effects that had, not just on the election, but, because Trump is so bad, it changed the course of history, whatever. In other words, Biden was bad, everybody knew it, and nobody would say it. Isn't that the theme of the book?
Yes, but the irony of this is, yesterday, if you listen to talk radio, if you listen to Armstrong and Getty, if you listen to Eric Erickson, if you listen to Markley Van Camp and Robinson, they all played the same pieces from Jake Tapper when he was yelling at people he was interviewing who were saying that the president was cognitively, say that word for me.
Cognitively impaired.
Cognitively impaired. He was arguing with them on CNN. Now he turns around and writes a book essentially saying, hey, the president was messed up. Talking about a hypocrite. I mean, this dude, journalistic qualifications, in my mind, he has none. This would be like saying, Saddam Hussein was a great person. You're a journalist. And then when the next minute, we go in and find him in his Uday and Kuday and kill his sons and hang him. Oh, he was a terrible guy. Okay, which side of the street are you on? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and but don't you think this, might be a classic case of Jake Tapper saw what happened and then says, I bet a lot of people would buy a book where I talk about how everybody knew, except for me, I didn't know, but everybody else knew, and they're terrible people for letting Joe Biden continue to run. Like, you see what you stick you lick your finger and stick it in the air, and you say, "Here's the way the world's going."
Well, it's like, can we go another 30 seconds?
Yeah, well, of course we can, yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about this in depth tomorrow. But now, all of a sudden, Mark Cuban has been complimenting Trump. Have you heard this, too?
Oh, yeah. What a remarkable turnaround by Cuban.
Right. A guy who was in deep for Kamala and telling about how bad Trump was. And now he's complimenting Trump. I'm going like, okay, come on.
Well, look at Zuckerberg, though. Look at all these guys that go through this whole thing of, well, it's essentially, we didn't really mean it,
Right. Okay, John, we have to get out of here.